Everyone thought he was gone for good. Time passed, seasons changed, and life at the Heartland Ranch slowly moved on. But some absences are too loud to ignore, and some stories are never truly over. That's when it happened. He came back. The sun rises slowly over the fields of Heartland, casting a golden light on the dew-covered grass. The familiar sound of horses breathing in the early morning air fills the silence. Everything seems normal, peaceful. But there's something different in the air, like the ranch itself is holding its breath. Ty stands at the edge of the gravel road, looking out over the land he once called home. His boots are dusty, his face older, marked by time and pain. But his eyes, they're the same. They carry the weight of everything he's been through and the hope of something he's not sure he deserves anymore. The ranch hasn't changed much, but he knows he has. Each step he takes feels like walking through memories. He sees the old barn, the fence he once helped rebuild, the tree where he and Amy carved their initials years ago. It's all still there, but without her beside him it feels quieter, heavier. As he reaches the main house, no one notices him at first. The world keeps turning. Jack is in the barn, brushing a horse. Lou's voice floats from inside, busy with morning chores. It feels like a dream, one he's not sure he's ready to wake up from. He doesn't knock on the door. Instead, he just stands there, unsure. He wonders if this was a mistake. Maybe coming back would hurt more than staying away. But then, a small sound breaks the silence, the creak of the door. It opens slowly, and there she is. Amy. Her eyes meet his, wide with shock and something else. Something softer. For a moment, they both freeze. Time doesn't move. There are no words. Just the weight of everything that's been left unsaid. She steps outside slowly, like approaching a ghost. He tries to speak, but no sound comes out. His mouth opens, then closes. All he can do is nod. She doesn't cry. She doesn't smile. She just looks at him, as if trying to believe what she's seeing. Behind her, Lyndy appears, holding a toy horse in one hand. She looks up at Ty without knowing who he is. It breaks him. He wants to run to her, scoop her up, hold her close, but he stays still. He knows he's not part of this world anymore, not yet. Jack comes out of the barn next, and this time the silence breaks. His eyes harden at first, unsure if what he's seeing is real. Then he says Ty's name. Just once. It's enough. Ty nods again, a little more sure now. He whispers, "I'm back." The words feel strange on his tongue. He doesn't know what's going to happen next. He doesn't know if he'll be welcomed or if he'll have to prove himself all over again. But he knows one thing. He had to come back. Something deep inside pulled him here. Maybe it was unfinished business. Maybe it was love. Or maybe he just missed the sound of home. The rest of the day passes in slow motion. No big reunions. No celebrations, just careful looks, long silences, and quiet movements. Amy goes back inside. Jack returns to his work. Ty walks out to the pasture, where a few horses graze in the distance. He watches them for a long time. The wind picks up slightly, brushing through the tall grass like a whisper. He closes his eyes. He can almost hear the past speaking to him. Every laugh, every fight, every promise. And for the first time in a long time, he lets himself feel something real. The pain, the longing, the hope. He knows things won't be easy. Coming back doesn't fix what's been broken, but it's a start. And in a place like Heartland, even the deepest scars have a chance to heal. It wasn't the kind of return anyone planned for. No grand hugs, no fireworks. Just quiet stares and questions left hanging in the air. Ty's presence was like a shadow stretching across the ranch, familiar, yet hard to face. Every creaking floorboard in the house seemed to echo a memory. Every trail he walked whispered, a story no one had spoken of in years. The ranch felt smaller now, tighter, like it didn't know where to put him anymore. And maybe that was true. Maybe no one did. Ty spent his first night back in the loft above the barn, the same place he once called home when he first arrived at Heartland as a troubled teenager. The same wooden beams above him, the same sounds of horses shuffling below, but he was different now, quieter, older, maybe even a little broken. Sleep didn't come easy. His thoughts ran wild. Every noise outside made him sit up. Every creak of the windmill reminded him of what he'd lost, and what he still hoped to find. By morning, the ranch was already alive. Lou was making breakfast inside, pretending not to glance out the window every few minutes. Jack, though rough around the edges, had already left a folded blanket and a thermos of coffee on the barn rail. No words, just action. That was his way. Ty picked up the thermos, paused for a second, and then nodded to himself. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Later, Amy found herself at the paddock fixing a loose latch on the gate. Ty walked toward her slowly, uncertain with every step. He offered to help, but she didn't answer at first. Just kept working, her hand steady, her face calm but unreadable. Finally, she said, "Why now?" It wasn't angry. It wasn't even cold. It was honest, and that made it hurt more than if she'd shouted. Ty didn't have a good answer. He wanted to say he was sorry that he'd thought of her every single day, that he wasn't sure he'd be welcomed, that he was scared. But instead he just said, "I wasn't ready before, I am now." The two of them worked in silence for a while after that. No small talk, no jokes, just the soft sound of tools and wind. Sometimes healing doesn't start with the right words. It starts with being willing to stay. And Ty stayed. Lyndy, always curious, eventually made her way over to the paddock too. She still didn't know who he was, but something about him made her stop and stare. She didn't speak much, just watched him with quiet eyes the way kids do when they're trying to figure something out. Ty knelt down to her level. "Hi," he said gently. "I used to know your mom, and your dad." Lyndy tilted her head. "You knew my dad?" Ty paused, heart catching in his chest. "Yeah," he whispered. "I did." It was a moment Amy wasn't prepared for. She looked away quickly, hiding the tears that crept up faster than she expected. Even Jack, watching from a distance, felt the shift. It was happening slowly and painfully. Ty was becoming part of their lives again, whether they were ready or not. The days that followed were quiet but full. Ty worked with the horses, repaired fences, and took long rides into the hills. Didn't speak much, he didn't have to. His actions were starting to say the things he couldn't. One morning, Jack walked up beside him while he was grooming Spartan. For a while, neither said anything. Then Jack muttered, "He still remembers you?" Ty didn't reply, but his eyes softened. It meant more than words ever could. Amy kept her distance, but her gaze lingered longer each day. Something inside her was stirring, a mixture of anger, confusion, and something dangerously close to hope. The man she loved had disappeared, but now this new version of him was standing right in front of her, and she didn't know whether to reach out or protect herself. Heartland had always been a place of second chances. Horses with broken spirits had found their strength here. Families had stitched themselves back together with time and trust. Now Ty was trying to do the same. But mending fences was never just about wood and nails. It was about owning the past and daring to believe in what might still be waiting. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were things he still hadn't said, pain he hadn't shared, and truths he hadn't faced. But one thing was clear. The only way forward was through. Some arrivals are loud. Some come with celebration, with noise, with hugs. But this one was different. She didn't roll up the gravel path in a rush. She didn't call ahead. She just showed up, like a memory that no one saw coming. And suddenly, everything that was starting to settle shifted again. It was late afternoon when the truck pulled in. Not a stranger's truck, but not one the family recognized either. Ty was helping Jack reshoe a horse when he saw it. The dust kicked up behind the tires, the engine idling low. He froze. Not because he was afraid, but because part of him had always known this moment would come. The driver's door opened, and out stepped a woman, tall, calm, with wind in. Her hair and a worn leather bag slung over her shoulder. She didn't wave. She didn't call his name. She just looked at him with eyes that said everything. Her name was Lily. Not many around Heartland knew her. But she knew Ty, deeply. From somewhere else, somewhere far from the rolling fields and soft hills. She came from that other part of his life, the part he hadn't talked about since he came back. Ty walked toward her slowly, like approaching a cliff's edge. She didn't smile. Neither did he. But when they stopped just a few feet apart, there was something between them. Something unspoken. It wasn't romance, not right away. It was shared history, pain, a connection forged in hard places. Amy watched from the porch, expression unreadable. She didn't ask who the woman was. Not at first. She didn't need to. The way Ty looked at her told enough. Not love, not yet, but trust. And that was sometimes harder to earn. Lyndy, too, peeked from behind the screen door, sensing the tension in the air. Even Jack raised his eyebrows, sensing something more than just an old friend arriving for a visit. Ty introduced her simply. "This is Lily. She helped me when I wasn't okay." That was all he said, but it was enough to pull the silence tight around them. Jack gave a polite nod. Lou, who had come outside by then, offered a stiff smile. Amy just stood there, one hand gripping the railing. Her knuckles turned white, but she didn't say a word. That night, Lily stayed in the guest room. The air inside the house felt thick, like a storm cloud that hadn't found its lightning yet. Over dinner, conversation was clipped. Lou asked about Lily's hometown. Jack asked if she rode. Amy said almost nothing. Ty kept glancing her way as if silently begging her to understand. But understanding doesn't come easy when you're trying to guard a heart that's already cracked open once before. Lily wasn't pushy. She didn't try to take up space. She just moved through the ranch like someone who'd seen pain before and didn't need to explain herself. She offered to help in the stables. She asked about the horses. She gave Lyndy a small carved horse she'd brought from the town she and Ty once lived in. Amy saw the gesture, and though she didn't say it, it stung. Not because it was cruel, but because it was kind. And kindness from someone unknown is harder to accept when your heart is still trying to protect itself. Ty and Lily didn't spend much time alone, but when they did, it was clear they shared something deep. Conversations on the back porch, soft, laughs that faded quickly. They didn't act like a couple. Not exactly. But there was a closeness that didn't need labels. Amy saw it. She felt it. And it shook something inside her. One morning, while fixing the east paddock, Amy finally asked what everyone had been too polite to voice. "Did you love her?" The question came out flat, but the answer mattered more than she wanted to admit. Ty paused. The hammer in his hand lowered. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady. "I needed her. When I couldn't breathe, she reminded me how. I don't know if it was love. It wasn't like us. It wasn't this." His eyes met hers. "It saved me. But it wasn't home." Amy didn't reply. She just turned back to her work. But her chest was burning and her hands shook slightly. Because even though Ty had come back, part of him still belonged to another world. A world where she didn't exist. At the ranch, even the horses could sense tension. Spartan grew restless. Storm flinched at sudden noises. The animals knew what the people wouldn't say. Change was coming, and change in a place like Heartland could feel like betrayal. But still, Lily stayed, quiet, helpful, respectful. She didn't try to take anyone's place. She just existed in the space left behind by years of silence. Whether she meant to or not, she became part of the story. And now Amy had to decide what her place would be in it. Some wounds don't bleed. They sit beneath the skin, quiet, steady, waiting for the right moment to remind you they're still there. And for Amy, that moment came not in the middle of a fight or a flood of tears, but in silence. A silence so full it pressed against her ribs and made her question everything she thought she knew about love, forgiveness, and moving on. For days she tried to convince herself that Ty's return was enough, that seeing him alive, standing, on the land they built together, was a miracle she should be grateful for. But miracles don't erase memory, and presence isn't the same as partnership. She watched him from a distance, how he laughed a little lighter around Lily, how he avoided certain stories, how the man who once read her soul now spoke in half-truths and unfinished sentences. There was something missing between them, and maybe it had been missing for longer than she dared to admit. Amy found herself alone in the old arena one evening, running her hand across the rails, listening to the echo of hooves from years gone by. This place, once filled with purpose and passion, now felt like a question she couldn't answer. She remembered the way Ty used to smile when he watched her ride, the way his hand always found hers without looking. But memory is a fragile kind of comfort. It can warm you one moment and cut you the next. Lyndy ran up behind her, breaking the stillness. She held the little carved horse Lily had given her and said something simple but sharp. "She's nice, but she's not you and Daddy." Amy knelt down, eyes stinging, and hugged her daughter tightly. Children don't understand the weight of such words, but sometimes they speak the truth in ways adults can't. That night, Amy sat outside watching the stars. Ty joined her, keeping a respectful distance. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "You changed." He didn't argue. "So did you," he said. She turned to face him. "Do you love her?" His answer was slow, careful. "I care about her. She was there when no one else was, but I don't know if I love her the way I loved you." The words hung in the air like mist, visible but impossible to hold. Amy looked down. "That's the thing, Ty. I'm not the woman you left behind anymore. And maybe you're not the man I was waiting for." It wasn't a goodbye, but it wasn't a promise either. It was something else. An understanding that love doesn't always survive the storm. And if it does, it comes back weathered, changed, shaped by what it had to endure. In the weeks that followed, Ty remained on the ranch, but something shifted. He and Lily began working together more openly, fixing the western trail, managing the younger horses, taking long rides in the early morning light. It wasn't romantic in the usual way. There were no stolen kisses, no whispered confessions. But there was respect, companionship, a quiet kind of closeness built on trust. Amy, too, found her own way forward. She spent more time with Lyndy, reopened a small training program for troubled horses, and began writing a journal, a place to put the feelings she couldn't say aloud. She and Ty still spoke. They still shared dinners. They laughed sometimes. But there was distance, not cold but necessary, like two people who once danced in perfect rhythm and now walked to different songs. One morning, as the sun climbed over the ridge, Ty rode out with Lily, and Amy stood on the porch with a coffee in hand. She watched them disappear down the trail, the dust rising behind them. There was no jealousy, no pain, just acceptance. She whispered to herself, "This is what healing looks like. It's not forgetting. It's choosing peace over longing." Heartland, in its quiet way, adjusted. The ranch made room for this new chapter. Lily became a soft presence, not replacing anyone but building something new. Jack, once skeptical, saw her steady hand with the horses and her gentle way with people, and gave her a rare nod of approval. Lou, ever practical, appreciated the extra help. Even Spartan seemed to relax around her. Ty had returned, yes, but it wasn't a return to what was. It was a return to possibility, a return to roots, not to restart the same story, but to plant new seeds. Whether those seeds would grow into love, friendship, or something in between, only time would tell. Amy stood taller now, not because she moved on, but because she chose herself. Her strength didn't come from holding onto a past that hurt. It came from letting it go without bitterness. And in doing so, she created space for something better. As the wind moved through the trees and the fields stretched wide beneath the golden sky, the land whispered the same truth it always had. Here, hearts break, but they also mend. Here, life doesn't go back, it moves forward, and this was just the beginning.